I could completely tell, like, he was just a different person and just not so angry. And it's just so, like, beautiful to see my dad be able to find peace again.
That's 17-year-old Alyssa Steele with her father, Robert Steele, a Marine veteran of the Iraq War, who said that at one time he took more than 300 pills a month for PTSD and other conditions. Steele found a more effective alternative in psychedelic mushrooms. A bill that advanced last week in the state Senate could be the first step toward clinical tests of mushrooms in Arizona as a medical treatment, and perhaps eventually an industry much like what marijuana has become. We're joined by Republican State Senator T.J. Shope of Coolidge. He sponsored the legislation. Welcome back to Square Off, sir.
Thanks for having me again.
I've got to ask, have you ever tried mushrooms that weren't from your family's supermarket?
That's the big thing, but no, absolutely not. But yes, the mushrooms at our supermarkets were great.
Not the magic kind.
Correct.
Explain what this bill would do, if you can, bullets, and what it would not do.
Yeah, well, first off, let's start with the not. This would not open up just going to your neighborhood Circle K or pharmacy and being able to pick up mushrooms or psilocybin in this case. Or even if we're looking at the medical marijuana proposition passed several years ago that exists currently, would not even allow for you to go into a facility to pick up psilocybin and then go home outside of that facility and use at your own leisure. What this will do, however, is go ahead and allow for, in a medical setting with a medical professional, to go and have these microdoses of psilocybin in order to treat the, in this case, most likely PTSD that you have.
And I put up some bullet points on the legislation. By 2026, it would allow clinical trials on mushrooms. Federally licensed mushrooms would have to be used for 7 disorders. This is a Schedule I drug. It's a narcotic. It is illegal.
That is correct. So,
and lastly, the Department of Health Services would license these clinics.
Right, absolutely. And we're working through that process with the Department of Health Services on what that looks like at the current time. And this bill is obviously the catalyst to go ahead and do that. But the key thing in there is that clinical setting. You're going to be, in my discussions with the people who have done this, like Mr. Steele, you're going to be in a setting where there's going to be a medical professional with you in the room. It is not a pleasant experience from my understanding. Mr. Steele pointed that out. Bob Parsons, who testified in front of the Health and Human Services Committee, also pointed that out, that this is not some, we're going to go and have a marijuana high of some sort after this. You will have a trip, if you will, but it is not going to be an enjoyable one, especially for these folks who have, combat veterans, others, retired law enforcement, firefighters, things like that.
Yeah, we'll talk about that in a moment. A Senate committee voted unanimously last week to advance the bill. Who brought the bill to you? Whose idea was it?
Well, there's a kind of a couple ways there. I had been hearing about this, obviously, from Dr. Sue Sisley, who is just around the corner here at the University of Arizona, formerly, and other areas, who's been talking about mushrooms for some time. And then we had Josh Moselle with the Psychedelic Association, who's been talking about this. He's an attorney, works a lot of mental health issues in the state. And then finally, on Veterans Day, I saw in a program where Bob Parsons was talking about his experience. And after all of his success and the billions of dollars that he has made with the successful companies, that in 2018, he finally felt at home from Vietnam over his PTSD. And it was very good testimony that I would encourage people to go back and take a look at.
And you alluded to this in Sue Sisley about the potential risk. Let's listen to what Sue Sisley has to say about what is a mind-bending drug.
Psilocybin mushrooms are definitely not to be played with. There's a lot of cautionary tales from folks who have attempted to use mushrooms either in inappropriate settings or overdosing on them. So that's why the research efforts are so critical right now.
And Sue Sisley is one of those researchers. Again, how risky are mushrooms versus cannabis? And I'm bringing that up because there's some simplification of what this might turn into. You'll have medical marijuana legalized, you'll have mushrooms legalized. What differences do you see, in particular when it comes to the risk level?
Well, I want to point out that one of the things, and we're trying to make sure that the risk level to the patient, and I'll keep on trying to, we'll say patient over and over again, because since this is done in consultation with a medical professional, this is truly pharmaceutical and unlike our experimentation with marijuana, where we had, frankly, groups that came in and decided to go ahead and put something on the ballot, and kudos to them, they got it passed. It is the law of the land of Arizona. We're trying to have this done in a very controlled nature where the legislature can go ahead and see what works, what doesn't work, every year potentially tinker with it to make sure it's done in the intended fashion that we're trying to do here. I can guarantee you that if this were just an outright legalization, or even a legalization in the sense of the medical marijuana experiment, I would not be sitting here in front of you. The fact that this is done within that clinical setting with a professional guiding the process along, and this is a long process. The folks I've spoken to say it can take 7, 8, 9 hours as this goes along, is very important to me.
And there are suggestions, even some hopes, because there are powerful economic interests behind this, that this legislation is a building block for an industry that could turn into something like what we see with marijuana now, shops all around the valley. Do you see that day?
I don't know that I see that day. I think that we're really, really early here in this, and I think that for much of the research that has been done in the billions of dollars, frankly, in research that's been done thus far, it does seem like at this point in time we're talking about medicine. Now, obviously, there are folks, and we see it, people obtain items illegally currently on a daily basis around the country, but that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about something that is going to be very controlled.
And lastly, where will the money come from? The governor put $5 million in the budget last year. I think that's being clawed back. Where will the money come from to get this clinical research off the ground?
Well, I think the idea is that one of the reasons it was clawed back, and this is inside baseball kind of speak, it did not have a non-lapsing clause in that appropriation, which meant that it reverts back to the general fund. There is an effort. I'm helping Representative Kevin Payne from the West Side, who sponsored the bill last year, to make sure that that research is kept within the budget. Obviously, we have a deficit right now, and everything is difficult in that fashion, but we're pretty confident because it does seem that this is something that the public is interested in. Maybe it will help people get away from taking 300 pills a month and getting a 1 or 2 time treatment to help people.
Got to leave it there. Senator T.J. Shope, thanks so much for joining us.